Hey, welcome to the DIY Homebuyer Podcast. My name is Nick, your host, and I'm here to empower you to purchase your next home without the help of a costly buyer's agent. I truly believe that anybody of above average intelligence and competency has what it takes to successfully navigate the home buying process. And I'm here to give you just the education, guidance, and confidence that you need to do it yourself. Why? Well, because I want to save you $15,000 or more on your next home. I want for you to be in control of the home buying process. I want for you to gain valuable skills that are going to serve you in all other areas of life. And on the largest level, I want to change the way that we buy homes for good. So, in this episode, we're going to be looking at one of the biggest challenges that DIY homebuyers face, and that's simply getting access to listed homes. I'm going to talk about the different barriers that DIY homebuyers run into and strategies that I've found for success in being able to tour homes that you're interested in. But before we get into that, a couple of things that I want to mention. One, I encourage you to join the free Skool Community that I have built, especially if you are thinking about buying a home in the next 3 to 6 months. That is a community where you're going to connect with other people who have either successfully bought a home without an agent or are in the process themselves right now. You'll be able to ask real questions in real time, get feedback not just from me, but from other competent individuals that are going at it themselves. We have live calls, just some great ways to connect with other people that are in a similar sort of stage figuring this out. You also get access to a course that I've put together. And I know that you hear course and maybe you kind of recoil because who doesn't have a course? Well, this is one that it's completely free to you. It's about 5 hours of content. It covers the essentials of the home buying process. There's a bunch of downloadable resources. I built that for you for free because I do truly believe in wanting to change the industry, change the way that we buy homes. So there's no catch there. It's just yours. The only thing that you got to do in order to access it is join that free Skool Community. There's a link in the description below, or you can just go to skool.com/DIY homebuyer and join us there. One more thing that I'll mention is while you're looking at the description, do subscribe to the show. And if there's anything that I cover in here that you find helpful or insightful or that would be valuable to others, I would love for you to share this because, as I've mentioned a few times now, the mission is to change home buying for good and to empower others. The reality is that to succeed in this mission, I need your help. I can't reach everybody by myself. And so if you align with the message that I'm putting out, and if you know others that would get on board as well, it would mean the world to me. And it would be immensely helpful if you would share this episode or share some of the resources that I've created with them. And hopefully we can grow this community and create positive change in the way that people buy homes. So that's the goal. Thank you so much for considering. Really, really glad that you're here. Now, let's go ahead and get into the meat and potatoes of this episode and address, all right, as a DIY homebuyer, how do you get access to a home? Because this is usually one of the areas where a buyer's agent tends to seem like they have the most value. Now, I know buyer's agents get a bad rap for just being, door holders and overpaid people to open a door and switch on lights for you. It's like, who can't do that themselves? But there is a convenience that buyer's agents provide in that you're able to line up 5, 6 showings in a row and go with just one person. However, the downside to that, right, is that one, you're having to pay that person like a 3% commission on whatever home you end up buying. So that's costly. And you are somewhat dependent upon their schedule as well. So if they're already tied up on a Saturday morning, well, stinks. You got to find another time to go with them. As a DIY home buyer, you don't have a buyer's agent to open up the door for you. So how are you going to get access to homes? Well, you're going to get access through the listing agent. You have to go directly through the listing agent or attend open houses, but open houses are pretty self-explanatory. So for this episode, we're going to talk about how do you access homes by going through the listing agent. What does that conversation look like? What are some of the objections that you may face from a listing agent? How do you handle those? How do you talk with them? And we'll talk a little bit about what you do as you're touring the home as well. But let's just start the first place. Like, how do you find the contact information for the listing agent? Because you're searching for homes on Zillow or Redfin, Realtor.com, whatever your platform of choice is. It doesn't really matter. But you find a home that you like, you save it, you look through it, you maybe write down some questions that you'd have about the home, and then you need to get in touch with the listing agent to ask those questions as well as set up a tour. Now, Zillow and Redfin and all those, they're going to have these big buttons that say request a showing. And they make that very prominent and it makes it look so easy. And you can see the home in 30 minutes time. If there's anything I want you to take away from this episode, though, it's this: do not click the request a tour button. Don't click it. I know it makes it look so easy and sound like you're going to get paired up with a really lovely agent that'll show you the home. But that agent is a buyer's agent. They're not the listing agent, and they are paying Zillow or Redfin or whoever it is to basically pair them up. It's a referral sort of service. And so you're ultimately going to be on the hook, or that agent is going to want you to sign a buyer representation, buyer agent agreement with them. And that's not what you're looking for as a DIY home buyer. So instead, you got to look for the small print, and it changes a little bit on each site, but usually it's going to be somewhere under the description, and it'll say listed by, and then it'll have the agent's name, perhaps their brokerage, and usually a phone number or an email address. And that's the ticket. That's what you're looking for. You want to find the contact information of the person who has listed the home. And then you're going to reach out to them directly. And I would recommend just doing it as a phone call. And you're going to call them up, and it's going to go something like this. Hey, Tony. It's the name of one of the guys I saw in a recent listing. Hey, Tony, I found your listing here on 123 Sesame Street in San Diego, California. I have been looking for a home for a while now, and this one checks a lot of the boxes, and I would love to set up a time to tour it. And Tony will probably ask you some questions, and one of the questions will likely be, are you working with an agent? And it's at this point that you're going to say, no, I am going at it my own as a self-represented buyer. That being said, I am educated on the ins and outs of the home buying process. I've got my pre-approval letter, and I'm happy to provide you any sort of documents that you need to know that I'm legit. That's the basic thing that you're trying to get across to the listing agent, is that, hey, I know what I'm doing. I'm not a joke, and that I'm willing to work with you, so that if you need to verify my identity, if you need to qualify me as a buyer, I get it, and I'm happy to do so. Because as a DIY home buyer, you need to understand the state of mind of the listing agent. One is that they don't want to waste their time going to show a house to somebody that isn't serious. So you do need to show them that you are a legitimate buyer. They also don't want to be doing work for some other agent. So if you are working with a buyer's agent, or you do plan to work with a buyer's agent, then they want for that buyer's agent to do everything that they need to do in order to earn a commission, which includes scheduling and showing the home. So he's not wanting to do somebody else's work, which is fair. So you need to affirm that, hey, I'm not working with somebody. That's not part of my plan. I am going at it my own. And then the other thing for you to recognize is that as a self-represented or a DIY home buyer, you need to know that that listing agent has no real like responsibilities to protect your best interests. They have responsibilities to be honest, to treat you like a customer and provide true, good, valid information about the home, about the property, to answer your questions to the best of their ability. But their fundamental loyalties are to the seller of the home. And so they're not allowed to say or do anything that would be a detriment to the seller. Of course, that is, unless they're disclosing material facts about the property. So they can tell you, like, yep, there's a known issue with the attic space where there's been a small leak in the roof. It was corrected about 6 months ago, but you'll see some evidence of where that leak was. That's something they can tell you. What they can't tell you is, yeah, the sellers are getting a divorce and they need to sell it as quickly as possible, and they'd probably take $10,000 under the list price. That's not something that a listing agent can tell you. That would be a violation of their contract with their client, the seller. So you as a self-represented buyer need to recognize that and don't put that listing agent in an awkward position where you're asking them questions that would betray the confidence or betray their loyalties to the seller. You can ask anything you want about the property, but don't ask about the sellers, about their personal situation, much less their financial situation. Okay. So back to the phone call. You tell them that you're unrepresented, that you're willing to provide pre-approval, that you have a fundamental understanding of the process, and that you would like to tour the home. Now, hopefully you got a cool listing agent who understands working with self-represented buyers like yourself, and they'll say, okay, no problem. Send me that pre-approval letter. They may have you sign a disclosure, not an agreement. There's a difference here. They may ask you to sign a disclosure that just recognizes that they, as the listing agent, represent the seller and that you are coming in from their perspective as an unrepresented buyer. If they ask you to sign that disclosure, that's okay. The thing that you do not want to sign is any sort of a agreement, especially like a buyer broker services agreement or a dual agency agreement. That is not what you are looking for. You want to just keep reiterating that I want you to see me as a customer, not a client. You don't represent me. I'm not looking to you to represent me. I'm not looking for you to pair me up with somebody that represents me. I represent me. I am my own agent. And if we need to disclose that fact, I'm comfortable with that. I will do a disclosure. I will not sign any sort of agreement. That needs to be your take as a DIY homebuyer. So hopefully that listing agent is cool. Maybe they'll have you sign that disclosure. And I think a reasonable time frame for them to set up a time for you to see the house is within 24 hours. It's not right for you to expect that they're going to be able to show it to you in that same day, within the next few hours. These are oftentimes busy people that do have other commitments, despite what you may read or see or opinions you may have about realtors. A lot of them do take their jobs very, very seriously, and they are professionals. And so you should respect and treat them as such and not be demanding of their time. That will not serve you in the long run. But I think it is reasonable that within 24 hours, you should be able to see the home. And if they try to push it out longer than that, if they try to say like, well, you call them on a Monday and they're like, well, I could show it to you on Friday or Saturday, that's too long, because the home could go pending very easily, especially in a hot market by that point. And so if they do try to put you off, I think that it's okay to gently remind them, one, of your seriousness as a buyer, and to express the concern that, hey, I don't want to miss out on this one. And I know that there's a lot of competition in the market. So I'd like to see it as soon as possible. And I don't feel comfortable waiting 4 or 5 days. Is there any way that I could see it sooner? And if they still resist, then two, remind them of their duties to their client and to just say, hey, I know that it's in the best interest of your client to show the home to any qualified buyer. I'm happy to prove that I'm qualified, but if you're unwilling to show me the home, then may I go through the seller directly? And I think even just suggesting that possibility that you would reach out to their client will make them uncomfortable enough that they're going to show you the home quicker. Why would it make them uncomfortable? Because they don't want you as a qualified buyer to go to their seller and say that, hey, I'm qualified and your agent is making it harder for me to purchase your home. Because then that creates a very awkward conversation between the seller and their agent of, why aren't you showing my home to every qualified buyer? That makes sense. So it's helpful for you as a DIY buyer to also know the obligations that the listing agent has to their client, and as necessary, hopefully not necessary very often, but when it is necessary, to remind the agent that you know what their obligations to their client are, which is to sell the home to a qualified buyer, such as yourself. Okay. So with that, hopefully you'll get a showing within 24 to, no more than 24 hours, really, unless it's like extenuating sort of circumstances. But I would expect that within a day, you should be able to see the property, unless, of course, you're wanting to push it out 2 or 3 days in advance. And, that's up to you. So you send over any information that they request, the pre-approval letter. They may want like photocopies of your driver's license. There, especially in certain areas, there have been crimes against real estate agents. You do have to think about it from their perspective of like, all right, these individuals are meeting perfect strangers in a otherwise empty house. So it's okay for them to want to vet you and just make sure that you're not a registered like sociopath that's out to harm them. It's totally cool for you to send them your driver's license or some sort of other identifying information that matches what you have on your pre-approval letter, and then set up a time to meet. Maybe you have some questions up front that you want to ask the listing agent. Go ahead and fire those off, and make sure that they're, again, intelligent questions, that they're about the house. You can ask, if there's been a lot of showings, a lot of activity. You can ask anything about like age of the roof, if there's been any major updates that have been done, if there's any known issues with the home, if there's a seller disclosure that they would be willing to send you, which if it's a seller disclosure, they kind of have to send it to you. That's part of the purchase process. So those would all be fine questions to ask, questions that I'd recommend. And there's even, as I mentioned in that Skool Community, a full list of questions that you should ask a listing agent. So if you want like a detailed list of those, join that Skool Community and download that list there. But you'll go and meet with the agent, and it's important that when you meet that listing agent who's showing you the home, that you again have really clear expectations. Make sure that they don't try and pull one over on you by having you sign some sort of an agreement. Again, disclosures about agency are okay. Agreements where you're agreeing to have them represent you are not okay. So if Tony says that he's going to meet you there, and then you show up and it's actually Sally. And Sally works in the same office as Tony, but she's there because Tony doesn't do dual agency, and Sally's going to walk you through the home. That's a giant red flag. Sally is not there, most likely, unless it's like a co-agent situation where Sally is also part of the listing agreement. Most likely, Sally is there because she wants to be your buyer's agent and wants you to sign a buyer broker services agreement, which, again, you do not want to do. So do make sure that you're meeting the person that you spoke with. Make sure that you're not signing any sort of agreement. Make sure that they're not using any sort of language about dual agency. The difference between dual agency and self-representation, I think I've talked about this in another episode. I believe it was episode 2 of the podcast. So if you want a deeper dive, you can go into that. But basically, dual agency is where one agent tries to represent the best interests of both the seller and the buyer. They try to represent both parties, which functionally just neutralizes them and makes it so that nobody has representation. That's not what you want. You want for the listing agent to do their duties to represent the seller, and you're going to represent yourself. So when you show up, make sure that you don't sign any sort of agreement. Make sure that it's as you expected. Do show up on time. Show up putting your best foot forward. Again, you're trying to be taken seriously. And so whatever impression it is that you give off to the agent, that's what they're going to report back to their seller. And more important than price or anything about the contract is that the seller wants confidence that you, the buyer, are going to actually close on the transaction. And so you need to do everything in your power to show yourself to the listing agent as a competent, put together, organized person that is going to be able to perform should you move forward with a contract on the home. So showing up on time, looking your best, you don't have to necessarily dress up in like your Easter church outfit, or or your wedding tuxedo or whatever it is, but do make sure that you show up put together. Wear shoes that are easy to slip on or slip off in case there's not foot coverings. Do be respectful in taking off your shoes right away. Don't get too far ahead of the agent because, again, they have a responsibility to their client to keep eyes on what's happening throughout the showing. And sometimes listing agents can get uncomfortable if you're going into rooms where they don't have their eyes on what's happening, especially in like the primary bedroom. So just move along with the listing agent. Ask intelligent questions as those things come to mind. If you see anything with like a crack in a wall or a ceiling, or if you see some trim that's separating, or any, you hear some weird noises with the house, it's totally fine to ask about those things. Ask what's known about them, to, again, anything that you've got questions about with the neighborhood or with local amenities around. Totally fine to ask the agent about those as well. And, there might be some things like in terms of demographics or schools or crime where they're not really able to say a whole lot just because real estate agency is weird like that. And there's a lot of regulations around what they can and can't say or how they have to frame it, but they'll let you know. And move through the house. I'll do another episode on like what to look for when you're touring a home, and that's also something that I cover in that school group. And there's a great resource that you can download, basically just a checklist and guide for how to tour a home. So you can pick that up over in the school group, but you're really just looking for, like, is this a home that, one, has any serious defects that would turn me off from it? And two, is this a place that I could live? Can I imagine myself here? And do try and envision yourself in that home. Spend a good amount of time just hanging out in the primary living area. Imagine what it would be like to host. If you've got family, imagine what it would be like to have kids in the different rooms. Really, you're just trying to envision, hey, is this a place that would work for me both now and into the future? And just trying to take in all of the vibes that you get from that. And then as you conclude the tour, you want to thank the agent for their time. Speaking of time, you probably 30, 40 minutes is about what you want to budget for a showing. It probably takes you about 10, 15 minutes to walk through most houses, unless it's a big property or a giant home. But you do want to be able to linger in those primary rooms and really get a feel for it, unless it's just an immediate no. If it is a house that you are interested in, you don't want to give away too much about your excitement. This gets into negotiations, which I'll also do a future episode on. But it's okay to be honest with the agent about, like, here's the things that I really like and that work for us. Here's the things that I've got question marks about and that I'm thinking through. But you want to try and keep it as level-headed as possible. You don't want to be like, oh, it's perfect, I love it, it's my dream home, such that they go back to the seller and say, hey, these people are absolutely head over heels with this place. Like, we don't need to negotiate anything because this is the one for them. You don't want to give the listing agent that impression. But it is okay to let them know that you like it and that you're considering putting in an offer. Make sure that you've got the best contact information for them, and ask them, okay, if I do want to move forward and put an offer in on this home, what would you advise or recommend for next steps? And they might be uncomfortable with that question. It really just depends on who the agent is and what they think of self-represented buyers. But many listing agents will be willing to provide you with the standard purchase and sale agreement for your area, so that you can fill it out and just use the forms that they're familiar with. They'll be able to answer like clerical or ministerial sort of questions about those forms with definitions, or just kind of give you an idea of, hey, here's how this form gets filled out. They won't be able to tell you anything about what price to put in or closing dates or anything. You can ask what's ideal for the sellers. That's totally fine to just say, does your seller have an ideal closing date? Do they have, certain terms or things that they're looking for? Those are helpful things to know in terms of making your offer as strong as possible. But again, we'll get into how to write a compelling offer in future episodes. The main thing that you're trying to get at this point is, what does the agent expect from you as a self-represented buyer if you choose to move forward? Are they willing to provide you the forms? If not, then you're going to have to game plan whether you're able to get those from the state, whether you're going to work with a real estate attorney, which is something that as a self-represented buyer I always recommend, because again, it's way less expensive than hiring a real estate agent, and you're going to get solid legal advice. So the real estate attorney could draft up the purchase and sale agreement for you. They may even have access to the standardized one, or there's some online templates and things that you can use for a standard purchase and sale agreement. So that'll be the next sort of step that you got to figure out is where you're going to get the paperwork to put in an offer. But let the agent know if that's something that you are considering. Let them know if you want status updates. If any offers do come in, tell them that, hey, this is one that we're thinking about. And so if you do receive any offers, I'd like for you to let me know, because we would like the opportunity to compete. Know that that's in the best interest of the seller, what you're asking the agent to do there. The agent is trying to get as many offers as possible. So it's totally fine for you to let them know that you would like updates if offers come in. And from there, just make sure that you end on a really positive note. You may want to open up the possibility of coming back for a second showing. That's something that's fairly common when you're a serious buyer, because 30, 40 minutes is not a very long time to spend in a place that you're going to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on. A lot of people spend more time test driving a car before they buy it than they do actually spend in the home that they're looking to buy. So you can leave open that possibility of coming back for a second showing as well. But in general, this is kind of what to expect as a DIY home buyer. And of course, if you're trying to look at multiple homes, then you're going to need to schedule showings with multiple listing agents. And hopefully you'll be able to line those up back to back. But, most likely there'll be little bits of space, gaps in between. Do give yourself about 45 minutes for each showing, because again, you really don't want to be running late by trying to cram too many showings in all at once. And then if that chain of events gets off, and then you're leaving listing agents standing in empty homes waiting for you, and that makes them upset, it just puts everything off on the wrong footing. So do make sure that you've got plenty of buffer as you're lining up those appointments, so that you're always putting your best foot forward, because again, that listing agent needs to vouch for you if you do make an offer on one of these homes. And so you want for them to see you in the best possible light. You want for them to see you as a strong, competent buyer. That's my advice to you. Let me know what questions you've got. I'm here to answer them. And so, depending on the platform that you're listening on, there may be the opportunity to leave a comment. I look at all of those, I respond to everything. So, if there's something that I didn't cover, or a unique experience that you've had that you'd like me to weigh in on, leave that comment. I'll get back to you as quickly as I can. If there's something that you want to address outside of the comments, well, you can reach me directly by just going hello@DIYHomebuyerAcademy.com. That's the best way to reach me and my team. We'll get back to you as quickly as we possibly can. And we will be back again next week with another episode of the DIY Homebuyer podcast. Again, check out the links in the description, join the Skool Community group, subscribe to the show, and if there's anything helpful that you found in here, please do share it. Like I said, I just cannot do this without you helping get the word out. So I would love for you to partner with me in that way. Thank y'all. Be back soon.